First up is Under the Banner of Heaven, which is an adaptation of the Jon Krakauer book. It takes place in Salt Lake City, and it follows a real crime that was pretty dark involving members of the Mormon Church and its offshoots and things like that. And it's about the investigating detective who, in this case, is played by Andrew Garfield, and his own sort of reckoning with his faith and all the horrible things that have happened. I have not read the book. I have heard good things, so I can only base this on the show. It's good. I think it's uneven, and I think it also requires you to sort of have an existing knowledge of the LDS Church and their practices, and for better or for worse, how some of their communities work. The show does try and get you into the, I don't want to say cult, but maybe, the more guarded practices and the sort of closeness of the community and some of that parts of it. But it still is more helpful if you're kind of aware of their impact and founding and all that sort of thing. But, I think it's still, at the end of the day, like, if you're looking at it as a police sort of procedural / crime drama, which everyone is obsessed with these days, who isn't, I include myself in that, it's not bad, right? I think there are moments where they sort of overplay the severity of it. And it's not to say that the crime committed isn't horrifying, but it felt almost hyperbolized in the way that it introduces it. And then once you go back and it starts to unfurl and it kind of like dives into it, then it builds it up better. But the intro episode, I would say just stick with it. If it gets better, for lack of a better phrase. It's got Andrew Garfield as the main detective, and then you've got Daisy Edgar Jones from Normal People, who I'm a huge fan of, as essentially, sorry, but spoilers, the victim. And then there's her family, and it's got Sam Worthington, Wyatt Russell from Falcon Winter Soldier, Billy Howell, Rory Culkin, another Culkin is in this. Gil Birmingham plays another of the detectives. It's created by Dustin Lance Black, who I'm a huge fan of. He was the screenwriter for Milk. I think he is good at dealing with the reckoning with faith thing, because my understanding is that it's something that he himself has had to deal with. So in that sense, those are the strongest parts of it. But as I said before, maybe he's being a little bit impacted by his own familiarity with the church, as opposed to, coming in fresh to this. And it's not to say you had to have this as be like, oh, we have to have a Mormon Primer 101 episode, but there are just things that are implied in the first one that you're like, if you know what it means, you know what it means. And if you don't, you're like, I don't get it. But overall, I think it's still a good acting showcase. It's a gritty crime, horrible things happen story. And it's well done overall. Again, uneven, but I would say it's worth checking out. And then speaking of crime, the other show I have this week is called Shining Girls. It's out on Apple TV Plus, and it stars Elizabeth Moss, who is this woman who, spoiler, has been the victim of a crime. The show is very strange. I thought it was going to be this like universe shifting thing, or I don't even know what my expectations were for it, but I know that it's intentional, that there's ungrounding effects to it, because Elizabeth Moss's character, has trouble with reality, or are we in different realities, or all these things. And the way that they approach it, it's almost more confusing than it is clever. There are moments where it's like Memento-y, where she's writing things down and you're not sure why. And is she okay? Is she like losing her grip, or is the world actually like changing around her? All these things. I didn't quite get into it. And also Elizabeth Moss is, I think, a good actress. She's problematic as a person sometimes, but she doesn't disappear into roles for me. And I get like a little bit of her early Mad Men Peggy from this, the kind of meek, mild, like not coming into her own moments. And it can be a little trying if you are not a fan of hers. That's not to say I don't like her acting, but it's become a little bit one note and she doesn't like disappear into the role. The show also has Jamie Bell, Philippa Sue from Hamilton, Wagner Moura. It's not a strong recommend for me right now, but there's also not a ton going on. So it's sort of like, if you want to check it out, some of the better shows are ending. Of the two, I would certainly pick Under the Banner of Heaven as the one to watch. But Shining Girls, if you like it, you might like it. But I'm not going to suggest, be like, no, you got to run out and watch it. Like, some of the Apple TV shows are hit and miss. Some are strong recommends. This one kind of falls into the spectrum of you might be able to pass on it.